Hello and welcome back to the Adorama podcast. Today with me in the studio, I am joined by Michel Leroy. How are you, Michel? Did I do it correctly?
Excellent. I feel
I practiced
great.
all morning long.
Did you? Really?
Yes, I did.
Awesome.
You are an entertainment and advertising photographer, and you have photographed everyone from athletes, including Olympians and triathletes and dancers. And I'm just going to run through the entire list. And you've done celebrity chefs and so many more subjects. And I am so happy that you're here to give us all of your knowledge just distilled into this one episode of the podcast.
I don't know if it'll fit in this one podcast, but you're very sweet, and I'm super excited to be here. Thanks.
And I'm excited to have you. You know, you have a couple series that we chatted about before we started recording that have really been these driving forces in your career and have brought a lot of recognition from the industry and have certainly come to be recognized for you and as you. And those are the Rally Bikers and the Alchemy projects. And you know, they both took significant amounts of time to create, and they're these large and personal undertakings that you've completed over the years alongside obviously all your other work. And I certainly want to get to those, and we will get to those. But I really, before all this happened, before you received all these accolades, I want you to take us back to your start and growing up in Montana, like you mentioned, and really how photography became this sort of vehicle through which you express yourself and do your work, and how it really became this budding career.
Yeah. Actually, it's a really great way to describe it. Photography it's a way for me to communicate in a way that I may not be able to do in terms of writing or in terms of even speaking. There's just something that photography does for me in terms of the way it lets me communicate in a way that I just don't know any other way to do it. And I'm in love much as the first day as I am today.
Did you feel that from the start?
From the start. And when I was a kid, talking about way back in the day, when I was a kid, I grew up in Montana, right? And the photography teacher was also / the woodshop teacher, who was also / the men's wrestling coach. So I wouldn't say the academic rigor was that high, but he was a regular guy. He was a normal guy, and he understood that I really got into photography, and he just, he encouraged it. And he also tried to get me to join the men's wrestling team, which I wasn't quite into. But, it was really cool. And I found in photography in high school something that I just didn't know was possible. Literally, I was like a puppy. I was just in love. And I've never quite fallen out of love with it.
That's great, though. Were you always capturing the kind of style that you have now, the portraiture, the black and white, all of these kinds of things that have become part of your aesthetic?
Yeah, no, not at all. It's definitely an evolution. Mm-hmm. But I think that that's really normal, especially for like a professional artist. I think that if you are in the beginning who you are in the end, I would be really surprised because obviously you haven't learned anything along the way. Oh, I started out, just like anybody doing street stuff. And
did you have a lot of landscapes?
Yeah, Montana, right? A lot of landscapes. But one thing that this is true from the beginning, and it's always been true. And if there's any way to define my style, it's just that it's people-centric. Like, I really only care about people.
And you can see that as soon as you get onto your website.
Yeah. The photographic elements and the tools and stuff change, but the connection to people is really the thread that connects it all together. And that was true from the beginning. Like, if I had to do the football game, yes, I would take pictures of people on the football field or the basketball game. But my favorite pictures were the people of them on the bench, like talking to each other and connecting. And they were like more portraity, even from the beginning. And I guess that part has never changed. The way I do it and the connection and the intervention or the amount of the awareness of the subject in myself has changed a lot. Because I started in journalism. That's my background, right. Photojournalism.
Which I think adds a very interesting perspective to your approach to subjects, especially.
Yeah.
And being more of the documentarian in many ways.
Which I think is a bit more passive. And I have enormous respect for photojournalists. But I think that sometimes a photojournalist, their position is to record what's there. And I think the difference is, at least for me as a commercial photographer now, I create what is there. I don't leave anything to chance. Mm-hmm. And if I leave it to chance, I intentionally leave it to chance. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
As a photojournalist, you show up and you discover what's there and you find the story and you try and find the story from multiple perspectives. One of my editors once said, it's like you know, if it's a story about a kid picking an apple, it's like there's the kid perspective. There's also the apple's perspective. You know, looking back at the kid, there's also the parent's perspective looking at the kid picking the apple. Like there's different ways to tell just one story. So for advertising though, it's like, I don't leave any of that to chance. Like I know where the tree is. I know where the sun is. I know where the parents are. I picked everybody's clothes. Like, and then you let the kid pick the apple naturally. Do you know what I mean? But you create all of the circumstances. And I think that's very different. And that's a transition. That's been a big transition for me because I did start in a very passive way as a photographer.
You were in Ohio.
Yeah, Dayton, Ohio, right. University of Dayton. And I, instead of working in like the kitchen or whatever there, you know, like 'cause I was a student and I needed money, I applied for a job at the public relations department. And get this is the funniest thing. I was recently written up in my little college newsletter, right? Super exciting.
Alum highlight.
Yeah, it's like super exciting. But you know what was really funny? I reached out to the designer and I was like, oh my God, Frank, like, I can't believe you're still there first off. And he's like, oh, I'm retiring soon, but you know, like, it's great to talk to you. I was like, Frank, you know what? Like just recently I was going through some stuff, old prints, and I found the portfolio I showed you as an incoming freshman. So it was a total of 6 pictures.
Wow.
And they were like matted at like Michels or something like that. And they're all kind of blurry. They're all black and white. They're all kind of blurry. There's like a basketball picture and like a team picture and like a picture of a girl who I pretended was my girlfriend and like just all this goofy stuff. And they're all kind of messed up. And they're like, I had to spot all the pictures because, you know, it's like a high school darkroom. Like it was not the best. And Frank he goes, oh, he's like, you know, I could tell right away. I was like, you're kidding me.
Wow.
I was like, I've been doing this my entire life and I look at these pictures and I would not hire me. So Frank, I don't know what you saw, but thank you because it literally set the course of my life.
Right.
Because in college, I learned that like you can actually do this as a job. And it was like finding a gold mine in your backyard. It was just like, oh my God.
Did he tell you what he saw in those photos that made him grab you immediately?
I don't know. Not exactly. He just said, you know, you could really tell, you know, when people are kind of dedicated and whatever. I was like, Frank, come on, man. You can be honest with me. Like, that was garbage. But, you know, like, I don't know, some kid from Montana, like his 6 best pictures printed as 8x10s and mounted on foam core at Michels, like, ooh la la. Like, it was such a big deal.
It felt like a big deal.
It's true. At the time, I was just like, I thought I was the man.
Of course. And then out of that came a job, which is even better, right? To have it actually materialize.
Yeah. And so I worked for the public relations department and I got to do all this amazing stuff. And then I transitioned to the Dayton Daily News. And then my girlfriend at the time wanted to move to New York. And I was like, yeah, sure. New York sounds great.
Okay, I'm packed up.
Yeah, it's like I was pretty footloose and fancy free. And I was like, yeah, that sounds awesome.
With the intention to pursue photography here.
Yeah, as a photojournalist. And that took like a hot second to figure out it wasn't the right thing for me here. And I transitioned almost immediately to, well, editorial, but editorial is a wide range. And instead of, we were talking about earlier, instead of being passive about finding photographs that are there, that present themselves, I thought editorial photography had a lot more active involvement and creating photographs. And I kind of fell in love with that. And I was a bit disillusioned about the idea of photojournalism. Not in a bad way. I realized it wasn't quite for me, or I didn't have the passion for it. And the people who do it well, like they live it, like they breathe it in. And I just recognized that I wasn't that person, and I wanted to do the best that I could do. And I figured that I should be smart enough to just move on to something else that I'm more passionate about. And I'm really grateful that I discovered like editorial, which transitioned into much more commercial and then advertising work.
And that's it in a nutshell. And
then
here you are today.
Dun, da, da, da.
Sounds easy, right?
That was easy. It wasn't
simple.
so hard. It was just a lifetime later. That's all.
Well, we were talking before we started recording about the peaks and valleys of it all, and the highs and the lows.
Very
and
much, right?
You know, there's no simple straight path.
There's no path. It's a choose your own adventure book. And I think that's great about it. I think that it takes an enormous amount of like self-discipline and just discovery or a willingness to discover and a willingness to be agile. There's this whole like business concept of like agile programming and stuff. I think that's the heart of what photography is. Like you have to understand that there is no path, or the path is the path that you choose. You make it yourself. There's no like 1, 2, 3. It doesn't work that way. Or at least it has not for me. And I don't know anybody.
I don't think it has for anyone who's
everybody's like, oh, you know, I did this one thing and like that was the silver bullet. Like it doesn't really work that way, or it never has for me or anybody I know. So I don't think it works that way.
So you have talked to us a little bit about the power of personal projects, and I think we can move into, you know, the work that you've done and how those have really been catalysts for brands to recognize you and for companies to recognize you and to see your passion work and see, you know, those deliverables that you've brought in through there, and that's Alchemy and Rally Bikers, but how that has really translated into a lot of other opportunities.
I cannot overemphasize how important personal projects are.
Why though? When you're kind of in the slog of, you know, work after work and needing to meet deadlines and, you know, making money and
totally
and all of those
I
little
believe
details.
I can speak with some authority on that issue because my daily life is exactly that. Like I'm super busy. I'm working all the time. Like, and you're bouncing from one production to another all the time, and you're having to change gears in your mind all the time. The thing that a personal project does, because you know, there's that like shoot what you know, like this.
Right.
I don't know who's credited
those
with saying
age-old
that, but yeah,
adages. Yeah,
and I appreciate that. But shooting what you know doesn't always hit you over the head. Like sometimes you have to find that. You have to force it. You have to make that happen. And the difference between a personal project for me and commercial work is, and don't get me wrong, I am the luckiest guy on earth. Like I get to create photographs for a living. Like pinch me. It's amazing. But I also have to answer to a lot of people. Yes, I run my own business. And on the day of the shoot, yes, I am the top of the pyramid, right? But every other day, I'm not the top of the pyramid. And I'm answering to art directors and creative directors and marketing vice presidents and boards of directors and whatever who have to sign off on everything.
a lot of hands.
Focus groups, all this stuff. Like, no, the ficus plant can't be in the background. It has to be a cactus or a succulent or whatever. And you're like, who cares? Well, clearly, I guess people care. And I'm very much a collaborator as a photographer, and I'm cool with that. Not everybody is, but I'm very cool with that. The difference is a personal project is all about me. It's me from beginning to end. It's my idea, and I just get to follow the sort of my passion, and there's nobody else giving me their terribly clever input, which I am often overwhelmed with. Don't let any of my clients hear this, but no, I'm just joking. Like,
but you're not tied to a deadline
I'm not
necessarily, right?
tied to
Any kind of
anything.
like, you know,
the rally
goals.
bikers. So, because you use the word catalyst, and I think it's the perfect way to describe it. Rally Bikers and Alchemy are both projects that I created by myself, I did by myself, and have become the work that has defined my career. And yet, I'm like a workaday photographer. I work every day as a photographer, and yet all these people come to me because they respond to the two personal projects, right? And they're like, oh, we love the Rally Biker project. That's so cool. Can you do that for our lawyers? And I'm like, I can connect with the lawyers and I can make them look, you know, as approachable and interesting, but they don't wear black leather and they probably don't have as many tattoos, or certainly they're not going to show me. So it's going to look a little bit different. You just need to bear that in mind. But I think what clients are really responding to is the passion, right? And the singular focus. Like when I did the biker project, I went out west. Like I'm from the West. I feel comfortable out there.
I read somewhere that you took the whole summer off to do it.
Yeah. Well, not the whole summer, but yeah, but a lot of it this summer. And literally I just put on a pair of cowboy boots and a pair of jeans and like 3 t-shirts. And, you know, I just like loaded up the back of a truck that I borrowed. And I just was like, okay, I'm going to bike rallies. Like I'm doing bike rallies. Cause you know, I grew up around bikers.
Have you been to one before?
Oh yeah, a bunch. And you know, like in Montana, out west in general, not just Montana, but out west in general, it's only warm for like 2 months a year. So it's like the second the daffodils are out or the crocuses or whatever, you know, like everybody on earth is on their bike if they ride. And, you know, they ride the bikes until their hands are frozen, you know, and like, you know, at the end of the summer.
Later,
and then, so people are really passionate about it. And bike rallies are like, I've never been on a cruise ship, but I presume it's the same. You're on vacation, like you're having fun. So you go up to people at a bike rally and they're happy to talk with you. They're like, whatever. Yeah, dude, let's talk. You want to talk? Like, I'll talk your ear off. And I really wanted to make sure I was being super inclusive. So I tried to go to all different kinds of rallies.
Mm-hmm.
And I just loaded up this truck and I reached out to all these like event planners, like or people that run these bike rallies. And they're like, what? You're a kid from Montana who lives in New York City who wants to take pictures at a bike rally? Sure. Well, whatever. We don't care. Just don't get in anybody's way. And I'm like, yeah, cool. Got it.
Wow.
And I
But just so open and willing to do it too.
Everybody, you want another secret about New York City? The second you leave the borough, everybody's cool and everybody will let you do whatever you want as long as you're not a jerk. In New York City, it's like, no, we got to get legal on that. Like,
yeah, right.
You can't do anything here. So that's another thing. Because I knew I was from the West. I was like, nobody will care.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a pretty chatty individual. And
no.
I know, it's a total surprise. And I just, I would literally go up to people at these rallies, all kinds of rallies. I was like, hey, I got this crazy idea. I set out this little pop-up tent. Hey, you want to come over here? I'll get your picture. And, I'll email it to you. Mm-hmm. People are like, I don't know. Sure, yeah, why not? I'm like, yeah, great, cool. So tell me about yourself. And I went to all kinds of rallies. I went to like dirt bike rallies, and like Sturgis and, like all these other kind of rallies, where like some people are driving these big tripped out like BMW, like road bikes or, like Harley, Fat Boys or these like totally tripped out, like Kawasaki's and Hondas and stuff that run on like jet fuel or I can't remember what nitro, they run on nitro. And the engines are like taken out of like chainsaws and like crazy, like wood chippers and then like hook them onto a motorcycle. It's crazy. Wow. And they're so passionate and everybody was just, it was just cool. Like, and they didn't care about me. Like I wasn't doing anything to get in anybody's way. And I would help all the like event planners, or the event organizers, I was like, well, I'll trade you. Like, don't charge me to come to your show. Don't charge me for like booth space. Mm-hmm. And, I'll take pictures for you and like, you can have them. I don't care. So I would take pictures at their events and stuff. And I mean, over the course of, all these different rallies, I photographed thousands of people. And I mean, there were a few, and I mean like a handful who were like, don't take our picture. Oh. But everybody else was like, yeah, sure, whatever, dude. I don't care.
But some of the pictures that you were able to get are incredible.
Right? Pretty fun, huh?
And they were so game for it.
Totally game for it. Also, I'm not trying to abuse anybody, like I'm not trying to take advantage of anybody. I was just like, they were having fun and I was having fun and everybody's having fun. Like, let's have some fun. Yeah, it's really fun.
Thinking back on it.
Yeah, there were like one or two people who were like, if you take my picture, I'll kill you.
Oh my.
Like, okay, cool. Well, I'm glad you told me ahead of time. Mm-hmm. Great. Have an awesome afternoon, dude. Like, can I buy you a beer? Like, okay, see you later. Like, that's, sort of the beginning and the end, and everything was fine. Yeah. And everybody else was totally cool. I also tried to be really honest with people, and I told them what I was doing and just transparent, because I think people respond to that. Mm-hmm. And I also followed up. Photographers are not always the best people for following up. When you take somebody's picture and you're like, I'll send you a picture. I'll send you a copy. I did that every day. Mm-hmm. Every single day at the end of the day. Because I was by myself too. Like I wasn't paying anybody to do this and I was by myself. So I would get my laptop and I would go to a restaurant or go to a bar and I would edit the entire day's shoot. That helped. My journalism background helped because I'm really good at editing and pretty fast. Mm-hmm. And I would send out 100 emails every day just so that people literally got them while they were at these events. And then sometimes it would really help. It would snowball because people would come over and they're like, oh my God, I love that picture. Oh. Like I brought over my 3 friends. And I'm like, awesome. Yeah.
Do they hear about you at another rally?
Yeah. And it's because every day I would spend hours editing and hours setting up pictures because I really didn't want to be that photographer who's like, I promise I'll send you these photos. And then I never did. Mm-hmm. I hate those people. Mm-hmm. They give all of us a bad name.
Follow up.
Yeah, it matters. Mm-hmm. It matters to me.
It doesn't. It's a testament to your workflow and your work ethic.
Yeah, and the ethic. I think the work ethic is really important because you can promise anybody anything, but if you don't follow through, it doesn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. And then it's really tough on the next photographer. So I tried to be really good for myself, for the people, and for the next photographer. Mm-hmm.
And try and build up the community and in the eyes of the subjects.
Best I can.
You have to. You become in so many ways an ambassador for others in your profession.
I think it's really important. I really do. And then the Alchemy Project was born out of just again, it was a creative need to just create things that were not orchestrated by anybody else but me. And
let's describe this a little bit to people
yeah,
for maybe who haven't seen it. Open up your Instagram app or go to his website, Michel Leroy Photo at both, and check them out. It's this very striking black and white series that focuses on it's really the athleticism and the physicality of these athletes and sports figures. And tell us about the creation of the concept and the choice to go with black and white, and how working with these athletes, especially in these forms of undress, how you really captured their movement and their essence.
Yeah, actually, that's a great description, by the way. I should write that down. So the catalyst or the seed of an idea was so small. So much of my work is defined by white on white, or like a white cyc, like black and white on a white background. And I'm the one who put myself in that box by doing the biker project that way. And like so many people have like know me as that guy, and they really like it. And I like it too, because it strips away. What it does is it removes all the crutches, and it removes the frame of reference. So you don't know anything about the person other than what they're showing you. So in a way, you actually connect with somebody much more intimately and deeply because you don't see their environment, right? There's nothing to suggest anything other than what they're showing you. And
that's a very interesting way to put it.
Well, and I discovered that doing the Alchemy Project, or excuse me, the Biker Project. And so my work was very much like white on white all the time. Like, and I still dig that. I do it all the time. I love it. I still love it. The Alchemy Project, I was going through a lot of like family stuff, like, you know, like my dad was sick and stuff. And I was just like, I need something that's different. And I was like, okay, not white on white, like black on black. Like I want the opposite. I just felt like I was in too tight of a little box, and I wanted to break that box. So I tried to do the exact opposite. And that was literally the seed of the idea was black on black, right? Like just think about shadows, and just everything you're going to do now is not all highlights. It's all shadows, like go into the shadows. And it took me months and months to actually figure out how to do it, because it's super technical. It's like a daguerreotype in the pixel age. It's like, it's crazy. It's really not what you expect. And it's a really slow process. I have great respect for people who still shoot film. Like I applaud them, because one of the things about shooting film is you have to be super deliberate, because it's not endless. It's expensive, especially if you're shooting anything bigger than 35. You only have a few frames anyway. So you have to be so deliberate. And so this process really, really slows me down. I have all the benefit of digital, but the physical process is very, very slow. And it took me months to figure out. And I got to tell you, when I figured it out, it was like a eureka moment. I was like, oh my God. I was like jumping up and down. And I have some very patient athlete friends who were just like, you want me to just stand there without any clothes on while you take pictures of me and a spreadsheet while you figure out like how this is going to work? I'm like, yeah, that sounds awesome,
Please.
right? Like, no, I know it sounds totally crazy.
Yes.
And a couple of the big things I wanted to figure out with Alchemy, or make sure that I was aware of when I started the Alchemy Project, was that it wasn't about nudity, even though nobody's wearing clothes. I don't know about you, but like I look at these pictures and I'm like, well, what clothes would make these pictures better? I can't think of any.
What would add to it?
Yeah, what would make this better? I can't imagine any. So I'm gonna eliminate that element. So there are no clothes.
That's a good way to look at it. Right? Like they're not bringing anything further into these images.
Yeah, just like stripping it down, both figuratively and intellectually, to like just its core. And then I was like, you know, like identity. If you happen to see a picture of somebody who doesn't have their clothes on, but you know who that person is, your brain automatically makes all these connections, right? And you can't turn that off. I didn't want that to happen. I didn't want that to be the conversation. So it's like, so I have to remove identity. So when you look at the titles, you don't know who they are. And when you look at the pictures, you could like, one could be me. You wouldn't know the difference. Or one could be you, and like nobody would know. Because I didn't want anybody to make that association. I wanted to remove that element from the conversation as well. Because I thought that it got into messaging that I wasn't into. You know, a funny part of this project, in terms of me figuring it out, was I finally had the idea, and I was pretty sure I knew how to do it, technically speaking. And so there's this amazing bookstore in New York City called The Strand. Are you familiar with The Strand?
Of course. Just a little bit down the street.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know, like 3 stories of books, and like, it's like amazing.
Like 10 miles of books or something.
So I went in, and I was like, look, I know a lot about the face. I know a lot about people's expressions and stuff, because I concentrate on those things as a portrait photographer with total focus. I didn't want to compare myself to anybody else. I pay a lot of attention to these things, so I can read these things really quickly. But I thought to myself, I don't understand the body as well, right? Like, I have one. I go to the gym, like, I get it. But I was like, I'm not sure I fully get it. Not like an athlete would get it. So I went to the Strand, and I started in one end of the photography section, which, by the way, is like an entire floor of a building. And I just went all the way down the line, like to the other end, like hundreds of books. I just binged on photography. And I left, and I wasn't super thrilled. I was kind of bummed out. I was like, this is not what I needed. I didn't know what I needed at the time, but I was like, this is not it.
Something was missing. Because
a lot of it's very confrontational. A lot of it's very much about nudity. A lot of it's very raw and in your face. And I was like, this is not the conversation I want to have. It's not a matter of taste. It's like, because I'm not saying somebody's work is tasteful or tasteless. I'm just saying that, like, that's not what I wanted to do. Although I can't say that I knew what I wanted to do at the time. I went to the Met. I went to the Metropolitan Museum here in New York City, and I was walking around, and I was looking at the bronze sculptures. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, this is it. I want to do this in photography. I want to create this, because it's not about the identity of the person. It's not about the fact that they are clothed or not, or to one degree or lesser degree. It's like, that's not what these are about. It's about sort of the physicalness of it, the messaging of it, the humanity of it, because we can all relate to it in a way. And I was like, when I was at the Met, I was like, oh my God, this is it. Like, so I stopped looking at photography books, and I started looking at like sculpture books. And all of a sudden I was like, this is what I want to do. And the Alchemy Project, once I dedicated myself to it, it just totally exploded. But I also forced myself to do that. Remember earlier today, we were talking about being a business owner and understanding those sort of peaks and valleys and stuff. So there's this concept called a Ulysses contract, where you force yourself to do something. You want to paint the living room, the walls in your living room? Get some samples and paint part of the wall. Because then there's a piece of the wall that's painted, and it's like, you got to finish this. I did the same thing. I was just like, you're going to do a minimum of 2 shoots a month, hopefully 4 every month. And if you don't, the following month, you have to do double that. Like, I forced myself to do these things. I created this really small box. I told you I was trying to get out of a box, and it turns out I just made a different box. I was like, you have to shoot athletes. You have to do it every single month. And I didn't tell anybody. This is a big part of the creative process for me, the exploration as an artist.
And by anybody, you mean?
Pretty much anybody. There were a few people, a couple photo editors I knew, a couple friends, my wife, my poor wife. She got texted all these naked pictures all the time. Like,
what do you think?
Yeah, I was like, what do you think of this? This is the one I did today. But I didn't tell anybody for 2 reasons. One, I didn't want anybody else to praise the work or to deride the work. I didn't want input. I know that may sound strange, but I didn't want that to inform me. I wanted to because I didn't know, trust me, like if I was photographing with a client, I never say, oh, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm always like, we're going to do it this way. And if that's not quite right, then I just end up doing another way too. But like, I would never tell a client, like, I don't know. No, absolutely like, we'll just figure it out. Like, clients don't want to hear that. But as an artist, I was willing to say that with the athletes I was photographing. It's like, they're like, oh, do you want me to do this or that? I was like, I don't know. Like, let's try this. And if it doesn't work, then we'll try that. Like, so it's much more organic, and it really allowed me to explore. And listen to me, I'm so so much hubris. I'm like, I didn't want anybody to like give me the wrong idea because I got so much praise. Well, I didn't want the opposite either. I didn't want people to be like, I don't get this.
Mm-hmm.
And then in my head, I'm like, well, how do I make people get it better? I didn't want that. I was just like, just take pictures. I swear to God, if these are just for you and nobody ever sees them, then that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But do it. And it will reveal itself. See what I mean? Like you got your hammer and your chisel on a big rock. You're like, I know there's diamond in here somewhere, but you have to hit the chisel hard enough times to actually figure it out and find it. So I found it. Like it was in there. And it's
How far into it?
A couple of months. I would say I photographed probably 5 or 10 people by that point, where all of a sudden I was just like, oh, this is it. Like, yes, like it expressed itself to me. And frankly, I put myself in such a small creative box. I created so many like artificial constraints because I actually thrive in those conditions. Not everybody does, but I definitely do. Like if you say you can only do it this one way, like make it awesome. I think that goes back to my journalism background. Like you've been to a golf course, you're like, okay, I got it.
Right.
But like every time you're supposed to come back and your editor is like, make it amazing every time.
Mm-hmm.
So it really forces you to be creative. And I thrive on that. So I created all these really tight constraints. And my worry creatively was that I would just sort of peter out. You know, like on the 10th person, I'd be like, yeah, I've done that pose.
Right. What's different?
I got that one pose. Yep, got that one. It hasn't happened yet. And, you know, like this is 2 years now. Like
you're still creating these?
I still am. It's pretty casual now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not keeping myself to 2 a month kind of thing. But yeah, I'm still creating. What I'm doing now is just exploring other body types. They're all still athletes to one degree or another. And the reason I choose athletes is because they're body aware in a way that I am not. And I think most people are not. Like for an athlete, their body is their tool. Mm-hmm. And so they understand that tool. It's like the way I understand my camera and lenses. They have real authority over their body. Because I'll do these goofy poses. I don't know. I'm like, and do it kind of like this. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, this is what you mean, right? And I'm like, oh, yes, actually, that's exactly what I mean. Yeah. Like, and it's 10 times better than what I did. And so in terms of this project, it's very much a collaboration. The Alchemy Project is really the essence of a collaboration for me because I wouldn't even be able to, I'm not a choreographer. I can't direct people to do these things. I just pick people who move really well and who are comfortable with me and I'm comfortable with and say, like, let's figure it out together.
But you had photographed, you know, movement before, obviously. You did the dancers,
Tons
you did
of athletes,
the triathletes, right?
Yep,
right.
Yep.
So it wasn't completely foreign to be approaching, you know, these powerful, physically incredible specimens.
No, but they are all physically incredible. Mm. And by the way, like big and small, tall and short, like they all are athletes. And there's a huge range of body types in here. And I've tried to be super inclusive. Mm-hmm. Like, so it's not all one thing or not all the other. And, you know, like, I get it. Like, I'm a white heterosexual male. I get that my instinct might lead me in a particular direction, artistically and just visually. I really try and fight that. It's not that I fight it. I accept that that's what it is. And then I go beyond that. So I've tried to be super inclusive, very intentionally, because I think that that's really important. Otherwise, you fall into like the male gaze trap. You know what I mean? And I'm as susceptible to it as anybody, except that I recognize it's a thing and choose to go beyond that. So hopefully the work represents that because I try and get a little tricky. I have fun. We have fun when we shoot these things. You might not know if it's a guy or a girl.
Yeah. Or necessarily sometimes which body part it is.
Exactly. Yeah. And I really love blurring that.
It makes you really look twice.
Yeah. Because it's not so explicit. It's a little more abstract. And I think that's where the fun is. If it was, you know, just like women doing traditionally feminine poses and men doing traditionally male poses, it wouldn't be that interesting. Like, you know, people have been carving those sculptures in marble and bronze, you know, in memoriam. But blurring that line a little and getting men to do very feminine poses and women to do very masculine poses. And this may not be apparent when you look at the images, some of those individuals are not what they appear either.
Interesting.
I've had some really great collaborations with trans individuals who are just as much an athlete as anybody. And they blurred the lines even for me. And I love those collaborations. I don't want you to know. I want you to think you know when you look at these photographs and say, oh yeah, it's a body, but is that a shoulder? Is it an elbow? Or is it a knee? Or is it is it a heel? I'm not sure. I want there to be more hands than people. You're like, hold on. There's 3 arms, but there's only one person.
Right.
I'm not sure what's going on here. I really like that. It makes this sort of figurative photography something else, something that I have not seen much of, and just compelling and interesting. Like when you see these things on the wall, I got to tell you, like, I'm very much a product of the digital age, and in terms of being a professional photographer. But I started in film, but I transitioned to digital, and feel very much like a digital native. When you see these in print on the wall, they are stunning. And that's not hubris. That's not me telling you how terribly clever I am. They really are beautiful. And because it's the human body, I want you to just like lose yourself in it. I want that picture to reach out and grab you and hold you in a hug where you just can't get away. And you're just like, you just can't stop looking because you're trying to figure it out. And it's exciting you, and it's challenging you, and it's confusing you, like all at the same time.
And that's what keeps you looking for more.
Yeah.
And flipping through or, passing along to the next one.
Yeah. And
it's that intrigue.
And that's why it's never gotten boring for me. Like I've done so many, I've probably done 100 people so far.
Wow.
And I've never recreated the wheel yet. Like I've never done a picture where I'm like, I've already done that one.
Do you leave it to them to direct it for the most part?
Both of us. I feel this is very much a collaboration. Like I feel that I give my my 101 level choreography direction, like try this or try a lunge or whatever. And then like they just do whatever they're going to do anyway. Like what's so cool is that like no 2 athletes are the same. They may look the same. You may even think, they have a similar physique or they come from a similar sort of athletic background. But like, one person is a lunger and one person's a jumper, so like they're all over the place. And I'm totally cool with that. I'm like, you tell me where we're going to go and we'll go there.
Yeah.
Because I also like, look, I'm taking pictures of people who don't happen to have any clothes on. And I have to be really respectful of that. And I try and be super respectful. I encourage them to invite anybody they want along so that they feel comfortable. And I let them explore. I'm like, we're going to explore together and we will figure it out together. And there's no pressure. There's no client here. If it doesn't work today, nobody's out but me, right? But I'm willing to do that because I believe so passionately in this. And as an artist, it has absolutely just revitalized me in a way that I really needed. I didn't know that I needed it so bad until I started to do it. And now I'm like, how did I live before this? Like, I don't even know.
So you said you're still working on it, but is there any other personal project that has kind of taken over in terms of prominence in your life that you can talk about?
Not really. I have an idea, but I'm not willing to share it with your millions of listeners. But I do have one more. I have another idea, but I don't think alchemy is over yet. So I'm going to explore this a little more. And the other one, it's a journalism term, but it's never-green. Like I can do it anytime and like it'll still be cool. It'll look great, especially the way I have in mind.
Ooh, interesting.
Dun, dun, dun.
We'll have to do a podcast later once you reveal it.
I know. Another couple of years from now, I'll tell you all about it.
There we go. We'll book you now. So tell us what else is happening for you. What are you excited for this year that's coming up? You mentioned before we started recording, you're teaching now.
Yeah.
You have a course at FIT that you're doing. So tell us about that. And
it's super fun.
Taken a little bit of a different direction.
Yeah. So a gentleman named Brad Paris, who's the chair at FIT in the photography department, he's somebody I've known for a long time. He and I both sort of came to New York at the same time. And he went very much in the academic route, and I went very much in the commercial photography, like shooting every day kind of route. And I reached out to Brad because I feel like I've gotten to a point in my career where that I can give back. I could have done that in the past, but I would have been, I wouldn't have been in sort of have the comfort that I have now. I've been running a business, my entire professional life as an independent, as like a freelancer, like I own my own company. Like I feel really comfortable in that world.
Do you employ others?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. Not full time though. The workplace is different than it was. We're in the gig economy, and well, actually, I've been in the gig economy my whole life, so I think it's totally normal. At FIT, I teach a class on the business of photography. It's called Professional Practices and Contemporary Trends. And it's very much about the nuts and bolts of the business of photography. It's not glamorous, and it's a little less compelling than creating a portfolio of amazing work, which obviously I care so much about. But it's the class I wish I had. When I was a student at the University of Dayton, I wish I took this class.
Existed.
Because I got out of school, I didn't know how to do an estimate, an invoice. I didn't understand what terms and conditions were, a model release, copywriting your own work, making a business card or a resume. I didn't know what any of that stuff was.
The practical, everyday things that you're going to end up using.
Yeah, to run a business. And frankly, we are part of the gig economy. The workplace has just evolved. And I'm passionate about it. I'm passionate about teaching these students, and I really think it's fun. It's I'm not sure my students get it quite yet, but I don't blame them, right? When I was a student, which I was probably not the best student of all time, I was a bit of a knucklehead, I'm sure. But I'm giving them information, and if 10% of it sinks in, I think they'll be so much better off. When they get out of school, when these students sort of transition into the workforce, they're just going to have an awareness that took me a decade to figure out on my own.
Right.
So I applaud also FIT for teaching this class. Or it's mandatory, by the way. It's
great.
It's a
As it
prerequisite. That is brilliant. I think it takes guts to force students to take a class that you assume they're just going to be bored out of their minds in, and yet it's information that they need, whether they know it or not. So it's actually been it's been really fun.
I mean, like you said, it's so practical, and it's something that everyone should know. And if they pursue photography or any other kind of freelance creative field, they're going to be years ahead of so many others.
Absolutely. In fact, there's even, I've had one or two students who were like, I'm not sure if I'm really into photography. I'm like, you know what? That's cool. And I actually appreciate you mentioning that to me. But by the way, everything you learn in this class applies to any job you'll ever have. So that's cool if you're not super passionate about photography. It's really important to learn that in college, and to be aware of that. But take these life skills. These are life skills.
Right.
Understanding how to write a good email, that's a life skill. That's not a photography skill. So I've actually really gotten a kick out of it. And it's also made me much more aware of it, because to do it every day is one thing. To be able to teach it in a compelling way to a 20-year-old so that they don't fall asleep in class is a different thing. And it's really made me much more aware of what I do and much more deliberate about how I do certain things. Because I'm a pretty deliberate individual, but I've actually gotten as much from this class, I think, probably as the students.
And I think a lot of the people that we've had on this show who are also educators, whether it's photography related or business related, say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Is that they get out so much from it. Just being in the community with people who are just coming up is such a valuable thing to learn. It's
inspiring too, to see the work that these students do. You see, FIT's got the students' work all over the walls everywhere. And I'm just like, oh, that's an awesome picture. Oh, check that one out. That's an awesome picture. It's not like scrolling through Instagram, right? Which we all do. We're completely inundated by images. I get that. But seeing that the person who's doing this is 20 years old, and this is the first time they've ever done a triptych or whatever, and you're like, oh, I really like how you did that. You took it in a direction I never would have guessed. It's cool. It is inspiring. I totally think so. I also think that the students, you have to give to these students at 100%. It's just like the photographs I take. When I meet a new person, I literally might be with somebody for 5 minutes. And if I talk to them for 2 minutes, I have a total of 3 minutes left. Because some of the people I photograph, they're on very tight schedules and they're surrounded by publicists. Right. And you can do whatever you want, but
you only have this time.
5 minutes from now, we're walking out the door. So good luck. So I try, I amp it up to 11, I go all in. I put everything on the line. I'm a loud talker. I'm a fast talker. I say things that are sometimes inappropriate, not in a nasty way, just like things that are a bit provocative, just to like, I just want to show the people I'm photographing that like, I am 100% here. I would love it if for the next 5 minutes, you could be 100% here. And with rare exception, I think like when you show that, when you really go all in, most people respond in the same way. And I think the students are the same way. If I showed up and I just talked in a really boring, dull way about really boring, dull things,
and we've all
that would
had those
be
professors in those classes. Of
right.
course,
Like nobody would care. They'd be like, this is great. I can't wait to get out of here before I die.
Yeah. And it makes the subject so much more compelling, and you actually listen and you want to apply it, and it has value.
One of the most gratifying things in this class, every once in a while, a student will come up to me and is like, oh, hey, by the way, now that I know what terms and conditions are, I put them in my last invoice. And, you know, like the client didn't kick back on it, you know, and like now I feel more protected. And I'm just like, awesome, dude. Like, that's great. Like all of these students, it's just so cool to see them sort of become young photographers, you know, like professionals. They're transitioning from like,
I think that's the key word.
Yeah, like young students into like young professionals. And it's really cool to see.
And business people.
Yeah, it's awesome to see.
Well, thank you for doing your part.
What little I can.
And thank you for being here. Thank you for chatting with us and giving us all of your tidbits of knowledge that we've been able to steal from you.
It's really nice to see that like when you do personal work that people respond to it. That feels both personally gratifying, but it's also really nice to see that people respect good work, because we're just inundated, you know, like Instagram all day, every day. Like there's thousands of pictures we're seeing. And so, you know, when people really get engaged and really, when the work really connects and people, you know, like really respond to it, it feels so good as an artist to create that way. And I'm such a huge fan of personal projects. I think it's essential to your growth as an artist.
And I think that comes through very clearly in your resume and in just the animation of talking about it. So thank you for being here and giving us all of that.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody for listening. And as always, you can find us right here every single Monday morning at 6 a.m. We will drop a brand new episode. And I want to thank you. Tell everyone where they can find you, where they can go and see all of this beautiful work.
Yeah, so it's all pretty simple. It's a Michel Leroy photo.
Standard across everywhere.
Pretty much everywhere. Do you know why? There's a lady named Michel Roy. It's the exact same letters. It's all the exact same letters.
You're right.
So my name is Michel and then Leroy. So I have to be Michel Leroy photo. So it's on Instagram, my website, on everything.
She got there first?
She did. She's beat me to everything. She's so smart. And
is she
actually,
a photographer?
What's that?
Is she a photographer?
No, she's a handbag designer in LA.
Amazing.
I know, it's crazy.
Wow.
Life is so crazy. The only thing that I would say is a little different, because I know we talked about alchemy today, is the alchemy website. There's a link on my website, but it actually has its own dedicated site. So it's just editions.michelleroyphoto.com.
Perfect. Go check it out. Go see it. Go watch it. Thank you again for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you to everyone for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.